If you're an entrepreneur, these decisions can kill your business. Family, what's up? Welcome back to the Less Business, More Profit series, Business 101. Let's talk about decisiveness. Leadership, right? As business owners, as entrepreneurs, leadership is like the key to everything that we do. If there's no leadership, there's not going to be any decisions taking place. There's not going to be any people following what we have to do. There's not going to be any inspiration or motivation to and from our teams. There has to be a cornerstone in leadership when we're doing all these things that we're doing as entrepreneurs. Now, decisiveness can be one of the biggest challenges in your business, right? As an entrepreneur, how do you know that you're making the right calls in the business? Sometimes it's not uncommon to feel like we have no idea what's going on, to feel like we don't know, if this is right, if that's wrong, and all this creates stress, it creates chaos, it creates this sensation of cloudiness around us, and it's not easy, right, to make decisions and pull the trigger on stuff that we have to do when we're feeling overwhelmed by all these, sensations of just lack of clarity altogether, right? So. How do we go about making decisions? How do we go about decisiveness in our business? Now, here's the thing when it comes to decision making. Being in this space of cloudiness, again, it's going to give you stress, it's going to give you doubts, it's going to give you feelings of fear, right? So this is what happens psychologically whenever we have stress, because that's what it comes down to, right? It's a big degree of stress. Whenever this happens and we are faced with a decision, the automatic response is often fear. It's default thinking to your natural wiring. What does that mean? Again, psychologically, we go back to our nature, to the beginning. So if you've done any work, for example, if you were a person who was lacking confidence at the beginning, and then it took you a while to kind of muster up that confidence and get a grip of your emotions and conquer that, self-security, self-empowerment. You've been through that for a while, which most entrepreneurs, tend to go through that route as far as personal development goes. All of that goes out the window. Anytime you're under stress, anytime you go back to this survival stage, the psychological survival stage, because you're being faced with a decision that is not necessarily clear, it's bringing you a lot of stress, the default thinking takes over, and now you're going to revert to your natural ways of thinking instead of the educated or the learned ways of thinking, which tend to be a lot better when it comes to business, right? This often, like, people get enamored with the idea that I have an instinct for business. I mean, that might be the case for some people, but I know it's not for most of us, right? Most of us learn the path of business. We learn the rights and the wrongs along the way. It's not that we're wired or naturally born with this sixth sense that just reads business left and right. It doesn't happen that way. Most of it comes through experience. It comes through emotional intelligence. It comes through adapting our own actions and our own thought process to think in a better way, right? To think an entrepreneur type of way, as opposed to that hustle mentality or that natural default. We're taking control of our thoughts. That's what entrepreneurs do. Now, when you're faced with stress, all that goes out the window. Why? Because we go back to that survival stage. We go back to that space where, okay, this is what I used to do, and it's just default. It doesn't even register that we're doing that. It happens subconsciously. So again, we go back to our default programming and all the training, personal growth, and anything, all the stuff that you learned at the seminars. It goes out in a matter of seconds. You go back to default thinking. It really happens. So the worst time to make decisions, big decisions. I'm not talking about whether or not you continue with your marketing strategy and processes that are already in your business, right? We're talking about stuff that can create a pivot in your business. You don't want to make big decisions, stuff that's going to rock the boat when you're in a time of stress, right? Again, be aware that you're going back to default thinking. Anytime stress kicks in, anytime lack of clarity kicks in, anytime the threat of losing sustainability and that consistency kicks in, we go back into that fear-based driven behavior that will trigger that survival mode type of thinking. So just it's important to be aware of that. What does that look like? It may look like, and you know what, I'm gonna get my foot off the gas. I am not gonna hire another person because it's gonna be another payroll. So you start looking at the negative sides of that decision as opposed to all the positive things that it can bring you, right? And again, a lot of it happens real quick. A lot of it happens during that emotional state when we're going through that euphoria of thinking about that new idea, of thinking about that new challenge, of thinking about, okay, what can be done, when something's kind of bubbling in the business. And that happens quite frequently when you're an entrepreneur, right? So the worst time to make decisions that are gonna be big, they're gonna make a big difference in your business, is gonna be while you are under a state of stress. Do not do that. Give yourself a little bit of time, and this is exactly what I do, right? So believe it or not, most big decisions like this come in with a time factor. There are hardly ever emergencies that you have to square out over the next 24 hours and whatnot, right? We do have challenges that pop up like that, but usually when you have a strategy that's going to be a shift, when you're tapping a different market and you need to make a big decision, you need to hire somebody else to run a section of your business, that's a big decision. That sort of thing usually has a time factor that's in your favor, right? So give yourself a little bit, at least give yourself 48 hours to think about what's going on, 1. 2, to just sit with the idea and let it process. And then 3, more importantly, to not react, all right? That's the thing. You don't want to react to a big decision as opposed to having some calculated thinking and having educated actions behind it. We don't want to react, okay? We want to take action. We want to take educated action when it comes to thinking about big decisions in our businesses. Again, shooting for something while you're in a state of stress, while you're in a state of default thinking, can really break all the progress that you've done. So give yourself at least 24 to 48 hours to think about the possibilities. And what I usually find is that that big idea or that big thing that was kind of bubbling up usually dissipates. It's either going to dissipate or I'm going to have the clarity of thought to actually pull the trigger and continue on strategically, right, on the decision-making process. And it's really important to ask yourself the question whether or not it aligns, right? You're giving yourself that time buffer to figure out if the big idea or the big change or big decision aligns with your ultimate path, with the direction that you're going overall. Most of the time, it's going to be shiny objects. They feel big. They feel like you got to pull the trigger right there and then. But the reality can be different. Ask yourself if it aligns and give yourself a deadline of when you're going to make the decision on this, right? A lot of times I give myself 3 days before I pull the trigger on anything that's going to be an impact decision type to my business. So keep that in mind. Making decisions while you're in a state of stress, while you're in a state of survival, and being rushed into all these things can really break all that progress. I can't emphasize that enough, right? So give yourself a time buffer, 2 to 3 days. Let it sit if possible, unless the building is burning and then, something else, you gotta call the fire department. But it's, oftentimes we have that time factor to our favor, right? So we can sit with things, see if they align, and then pull the trigger on it or just let it fall off, right? Now make the decision to go hit that like button right now and help me spread the word, right? Help me share the love. Until the next video, stay focused, you got this.